has always craved some sweet-sounding instrument so that he might make music and be glad.
It wasn't just a record label that could thwart the ambition of an aspiring rocker.
Today, his fancy turns more and more to something he can hang easily around his neck.
A board of trade ban on the sale of American goods meant that the tools of the trade lay tantalizingly out of reach.
You couldn't go in a shop and buy an American guitar like you can now. You know, I'll have a Telecaster, can I have a Stratocaster, can I have a Gretsch? You couldn't get them, you just couldn't get them.
We were stuck with these German guitars, which didn't go down too well actually as the war just finished, but they made a German plywood.
I saw this in my local music store in Wolverhampton. There's a shop called the Bandbox. It's a Dallas Tuxedo, an English bass. The neck is about as fat that way as it is this way.
On Buddy Holly's first album, which is called The Chirping Crickets, you see him posing with the guys, and you saw this thing, and we didn't know what it was. It looked like a spaceship. And Cliff said, I'll get one of those, and he had to import it.
Well, the dream was to have a Fender Precision bass. It's a real instrument. This was a kind of amateur plank, really.
So this became, courtesy of Cliff, who paid 140 guineas for it. This became the first Fender Strat in the UK, and I would guess in Europe too.
This is the first time this has been plugged in for 52 years, so I hope it works. The radio is from 1952. This is not going to work now, is it?
Thank you, Buddy Holly.
Ah. Yeah. We have sound.
When I first saw a Stratocaster properly, I realized that, in fact, it's a thing of sculpted beauty. If you look at the cross-section of the thing, it's just, you know, it's just, I mean, that could be something flying through space to me.
It curves in and it's chamfered on the top so that there are no hard edges to dig into the body, because he realized how sensitive guitar players are. And we need these little things.
First produced in 1954, it's become a design classic. Its sound still inspires passionate allegiance, and David Gilmour has a very early model indeed, serial number 0001.
I don't think it's the very first one ever made, but it's a 1954 Fender Stratocaster, and they don't get much better than this. I mean, this is about as perfect as a guitar can be. Well, Hank Marvin had a Fender Stratocaster, and that was what I wanted. I had a Hofner Club 60, which was as close to the Fender as I could afford when I was a young lad. Nice guitar, but I wanted that Stratocaster. And that's
why
what I
did you
went
want
for.
the Stratocaster?
Because Hank Marvin made it sound so good.
I started listening to the early American rock and roll guitarists, and they were mainly the guys who were on records by Elvis, Scotty Moore, Cliff Gallup on the Gene Vincent records, Buddy Holly, Chuck Berry, James Burton, and a few others. And ultimately, the guitar that took my fancy was the one I saw in Buddy Holly's hand on the first Crickets album. So Cliff offered to buy me a guitar, and I thought, yeah, the Fender's the way to go.
January the 26th, 1958. Buddy caused a sensation when he appeared on The Ed Sullivan Show, but his guitar is almost inaudible in the studio sound mix after a backstage row with Ed, who thought the song was far too raucous. At least the Strat was on TV in America. In the UK, it was a distant dream, thanks to a Board of Trade ban on American imports. But that didn't stop Cliff Richard.
This was the first Stratocaster in the UK. And we went, oh, what is that? Look at this, look at that. If you saw this in, I think it was about May of 1959, we literally went, can I touch it, you know? And it cost him, I think, about 140 guineas, as it was then. And he brought it literally for Hank to play, gave it to Hank and said, you play all that. And Hank played all the solos and the hits on it. So it's...
And today it's priceless.
It's worth a few bob now. Yeah. Is that an offer?
Let me see what I've got, some more change.
It's a very fine guitar. It's a funny situation, that one, because I had dinner with Cliff a couple of years ago, and I said, what's the story about that Stratocaster? Did you give it to Bruce? He said, no, I didn't. He said he asked me if he could borrow it, and he's never given me it back.
And that was 32 years ago. I've had it ever since. And he's not getting it back.
I mean, what you wanted, as everybody will have talked about, is the red Stratocaster. I mean, when I went to the cinema in 1961 and I saw The Young Ones with Cliff Richard, and there's a moment where there's all this sort of wet stuff going on between Cliff and Eunice Stubbs, and then suddenly there's a cut, and the Shadows are doing the Savage. And it was just like, ah, there's two red Strats and a red precision bass and the steps. I mean, that was it, you know, and that was it for everybody.
This is the one that I wanted. It had to be red.
Why?
Well, I had an EP with the Shadows on the front, and there, round Hank's neck, was this red Strat. I saw actually a flamingo pink one in the shop at the bottom of the main road where I lived. And I remember standing outside the shop for hour after hour, just looking at the guitar. So it became a real object of desire, you know. Unfortunately, they cost over £160, and my dad couldn't afford it. It was years of pestering, and eventually it ended up with a £50 guitar called a Hofner, which was a kind of a copy, really. And I loved that. My first guitar, I mean, I think probably slept with it, and I didn't have the nerve then to ask Dad for an amplifier.
So it quickly became the trademark of the band. They were all equipped with these red Fenders. And everybody aspired to a red guitar. You couldn't afford a Fender. The average weekly wage was about £6 if you were lucky. And back in those days, a red guitar was a symbol of rebellion.
Yeah.
The bar, that was the main asset of the Fender Stratocaster. That was the first one with a inbuilt vibrato system. And Hank perfected the art of playing with it in his hand, so he was constantly wobbling it at the same time.
If you wobble it slightly, you get a vibrato like a human voice, and that really appealed to me because playing any kind of solo, particularly a slow one, I always wanted to try to get a more vocal approach to it. And I found, too, that I could hit notes, and after hitting the note, bend the string down, wobble it, and if I ran out of ideas, just shake it, you know.
Rock's such a strange thing. It has to be entertaining. You have to sell tickets. It has to be fun. You have to be able to dance to it. But it's almost that something more is required of it. Where the guitar came into it for me is it gave me something which was more than something on which you played a tune. I don't know if this is true for Eric. I don't know if it's true for Jimmy Page, but it was definitely true for Jimi Hendrix.
Sucker to me one time. Look out there.
When I heard Jimi Hendrix, I thought, that's the bloody guitar. You know, that is the guitar. That's what it should be doing. He was making the most advanced, strange noises you could make on any instrument in the whole world because there were no keyboards. There was nothing you could make that kind of sound on except an electric guitar.
And as a shaman, which he was, you know, he was able to sort of channel light or something in some bizarre way. If you didn't ever see Jimi Hendrix perform, you know, you've just missed it. Sorry, you've missed it. You know, I missed Charlie Parker, so fuck off. You know, there's nothing you can do about it.
This is Jimi Hendrix's Stratocaster. He famously set fire to it at a London performance over 40 years ago. Hendrix is perhaps the greatest rock guitarist the planet has ever known. And this sorry-looking object is both a sacred relic of a moment in rock history and a reminder that in the end it isn't the guitar, but what you do with it that really counts.